On episode 293 of the Tennis Files podcast, you'll learn the 10 best tips from the show that help my game. Hey there, and welcome to another episode of the show. It's always a pleasure having you listening to it. And today I have a show for you that is inspired from a listener email, actually from Tim. So a big shout out to you. And this is about the 10 best tips from the podcast that has helped me. And obviously a huge task to try to think of all the different amazing pieces of advice from the guests. But I did come up with a list of 10 for you and also a bonus because I always like to over-deliver. But I'm sure that you all probably have your favorite 1, 2, or 10 tips from the show, and feel free to let me know what they are. You can always email me at mehrban@tennisfiles.com. That's MEHRBAN @tennisfiles.com. But the first tip that has helped me a lot is to cause chaos and confusion by using different doubles formations. This comes from Louis Caillet from episode 140 of the show. And by the way, we'll have the links to all the episodes that I referenced today. But I used to play doubles in a very passive manner. I really didn't know how to play doubles until I entered college, probably because I barely played any doubles at all in juniors. It was pretty much all singles, except for the odd tournament here or there, which I, again, didn't know what I was doing. But I gradually learned how to play, and through interviewing all of the coaches that I've had on the show and my summits, which the summit is coming up pretty soon, actually, I found out about, the huge utility of poaching, of using the I formation, which is incredible and very versatile, and the Aussie formation, especially to set up forehands for the server. And these formations, even more than setting you up to pick off shots, also just makes the returning team very uncomfortable because, if you just keep the same standard one up at the net and one serving at the same spot and you don't move or change it up, then of course, the returner is going to be much more comfortable at returning, the ball into the court without much worry about the serving team taking advantage. But when you use these different formations that I mentioned, that's when you can get a lot of errors produced because all of a sudden now the returner doesn't know whether the net player is going to cross, poach that is, or stay, and then all of a sudden the returner feels the pressure to maybe hit down the line sometimes, which is not easy, especially if the server is able to place the ball pretty well. And yeah, it just is a great way to change the tide of a match. So I definitely encourage you to think of these different formations when you're playing doubles, and maybe you're struggling, either that or maybe you're winning hugely. I almost said bigly there. Hugely, and you want to try out some different formations so that you can execute them and deploy them better in future matches. Tip number 2 that helped me so much with my tennis game is the racket drop timing, where you need to time that with the push off of the legs. And that's actually something I'm still working on. And this tip comes from Rick Macy, episode 143 of the show. And the basic principle is that a lot of players, they're dropping their racket, way before they're pushing off with their legs. And this causes an incongruency, if that's the right word. And what you need to do is first of all, take a video of your serve and then see, is the racket drop coinciding with the pushing off of your legs, from the ground going upwards. And if that's not happening, then you definitely need to work on your biomechanics. And you just lose a lot of MPHs on your serve when you don't have this racket drop timing down pat. So if you watch all the great servers, go on YouTube and click the settings button and put it on, 0.25 speed or 0.50 speed, you'll see that, when the racket drops from the trophy position, that happens at the same time as the legs pushing off the ground. I just repeated that a few times to reiterate the image there. But yeah, that's a really insightful tip that prior to talking to Rick Mace, I didn't really think about. Tip number 3 is to pick big targets when being aggressive. And this one is from my interview with Brad Gilbert, who's, I believe, reached top 4 in the world, as well as coached some amazing players like Andre Agassi. Everybody probably remembers that. But yeah, a lot of players, when they go aggressive, they also make it even harder on themselves by going, for the lines. When a lot of times, especially when it's like a crunch time point, why not just go for a big target? I mean, even the middle of the, at least the middle of the court, not any of the corners when you want to hit big. And this just provides you with more room for error, a higher margin for error. And then at the same time, then when you pressure your opponent through a higher percentage shot, then you can yield short balls and things like that, and then have an easier next shot. So definitely highly encourage you to pick big targets when you're being aggressive. Same thing on the return too. It's such a great play, just hitting the return hard at the middle. Obviously, the middle of the net is the lowest, so that would work out really well with that sort of tactic or principle. Tip number 4 is to practice your serve and returns more, because it's, those are the 2 most important shots in the game by far. Everybody, some of you have heard about Craig O'Shaughnessy from episode 198, and he's been on the summit a couple times. And he's talked about the first 4 shots, where first off, 70% of rallies end in errors, where 30% only 30% end in winners. And then by the same token, approximately 70% of all points end in 1, 2, 3, or 4 shots. So the norm is for players to go out there on the practice court and then just try and maintain these super long rallies. And then maybe at the end of the practice, they'll hit like 10 minutes of serves or something like that, and then they won't even return the serve. Whereas you want to be practicing your serve and your return, because those make up the highest percentage of points, of rally lengths, and then followed by the serve +1. So, if you're serving, you hit the serve, the return returns the ball, and then that serve +1 is that next shot for you. And the return +1 is obviously the returner's second shot. So, yeah, I think that you definitely want to prioritize your practices and make them as efficient as possible. Sure, a lot of you just, I guess, have a ton of enjoyment from just rallying and whatnot. But when you really think about where am I putting, what is going to give me the biggest return on investment in terms of match success, that's going to be your serve and returns, and then also, the 2 shots afterwards. So thanks to Craig for that great insight. Tip number 5 is to focus on your footwork. This comes from Michael Russell, who's a great player on the tour, and now he's doing a great job coaching on tour as well. I believe Taylor Fritz. That should be right. But he is, still is actually, if you look at him, but he was one of the most fit players on tour. But, he made a point that, and something that I've talked about as well, is focusing on your footwork, because you do see a lot of players, like when they miss a shot, like they take a shadow swing and they think it's like has something to do with the technique of their swing. And, of course, sometimes it does, but a lot of times you're just not in position. So when I am producing a lot of errors, I actually tell myself to focus on my footwork, getting my feet set, because it's only when you're at, you have a staple base and you're able to, plant your feet and use your kinetic chain from the ground up properly and efficiently, that you're able to hit a solid shot. So definitely the intensity of your footwork definitely correlates to your success in terms of, shot success. And when I get nervous as well, in matches, I also, again, try to intensify my footwork. That really helps a lot. Tip number 6 is prioritizing technique over winning in the short term, from legendary Nick Bollettieri, rest in peace as well. He passed away, somewhat recently. And so, here I think to my own game, where, as a junior, I didn't think too much about technique. I was just trying to rack the wins up and just being as consistent as possible. But then I developed some suboptimal habits, where later on in life you have to try to fix, certain serve deficiencies, backhand could be a little smoother and whatnot. So yeah, but if you, especially I guess if you have kids, juniors that you're working with, or even yourself, like you're an adult and you know that changing a particular area of your serve technique in the short term, you might hit some more double faults, you might lose, or maybe you just want to take off of competition, which you enjoy, but in the long term, you're going to develop a huge potent weapon and solve your problems on the court, or at least a big problem that you have, perhaps, or augment your weaponry in your toolkit. So then you do want to just take the short term loss for a long term gain. So that's a really good one from Coach Balotelli there. Number 7 is to record yourself while playing on video. I did mention this, I think, in the beginning about tip number 2, but it's really important. And I was talking with a couple players at my Friday Young Professionals, like tennis social event, and I think one of them mentioned that they hate, this person hates recording themselves and watching themselves play. And I totally get it. But it's really important because you're going to find a lot of flaws. Maybe you won't if you're super good, but you'll find a lot of technical or strategic mistakes that you're making. Maybe your footwork isn't as fast at it as you think it is, which is something that I found out. But it's really important to watch yourself play. I mean, either you need to have like coaches who are very attentive and watching you all the time, or record yourself. All you need is just your cell phone and a tripod of some sort, or, some sort of clamping device on the fence, or a QM1 mount or a tennis mount, things of that nature. And yeah, you just set it up, hit the record button there, and you're off. And then you can find out what you can improve upon. I found so many things in my game from recording. And this tip, I remember vividly, Ian Westerman from Essential Tennis, episode 61 of the show. So this was more than 230 episodes ago, 232 episodes ago, actually, that Ian went on pretty much a rant about why tennis players need to video themselves while playing. So points still will hold forever until we get automatic video at every court, which I don't know when that's going to be, but we'll see. But yeah, definitely do that. And also on my YouTube channel, I do have a video about the best equipment to use for that and different, I guess, levels of investment and whatnot. But I mentioned the most cost-effective and easiest one to do, so just do one of those. And then tip number 8 is to focus on the contact point, by Coach Vesa Ponka, episode 216 of the podcast. He works at the Junior Tennis Champions Center, and I remember taking a lesson from him a long time ago when I was like 16 and feeling like I was going to faint, but it was like an amazing lesson. And he prioritized just intensity and whatnot. But one of the things that he mentioned during our interview on episode 216 was to focus on the contact point. And it really is a hugely important tip and helps instantaneously. Because if you think about it, ideally what you want to do is try to hit the ball around, your ideal contact point as much as possible. So you want to consistently use your footwork, which is, again, tip number 5, to get yourself in the position where you're hitting the ball that's ideal to your grip and swing path, So, those with Western grip might like their contact point. An ideal one would be a bit higher than those who hit with semi-Western, and same goes for those who hit Eastern or within Eastern grip. So yeah, just that alone, it helped my backhand a lot. I think a week ago, like I was making quite a few errors on my backhand for whatever reason, and then I thought about Vesa's tip about the contact point, and that alone just like fixed actually quite a bit of my technical supposed technical issues that I was having. So really enjoy that tip. It helps so much, and it helps activate your footwork too when you're trying to get a consistent contact point. You automatically just start moving. So it's a great one. Kills a few birds with one stone, although I would never kill a bird. Anyways, yeah, number 9, tip number 9 is to develop a game plan and use your visualization. This was from James Blake, former world number 4. It's the second world number 4 I've had besides Brad Gilbert, just on the show here mentioned. This was from episode 96. So almost, was it 197 episodes ago? And he talked about the importance of developing a game plan, and super important. I mean, when you go into a match, at the very least, if you don't know your opponent and you're not able to watch them before your match, or you haven't seen them on any sort of video, they haven't been taped before, then you want to go in thinking about your strengths and your weaknesses and the game plan, how you want to set up points, point patterns, so that you can have the most success. And so James would develop this game plan before every single match. And in addition to that, he would also visualize the points and how they would play out. That helped him be very successful, and I highly encourage you to try and do the same. Visualization is certainly has been proven to work. I think there's been I forget who it was, somebody who got injured and then they just kind of visualized themselves hitting free throws, and then, they were still, when they came back, they were shooting amazing free throw percentage, something like that. But I mean, the point of it is, develop your game plan, also visualize how it happens, and then you're going to reinforce what you need to do to be successful, assuming that your game plan is sound. So thanks to James Blake for that. And tip number 10 is to use an in-between point routine to reset after each point and refocus. This is from Jeff Greenwald, episode 46. That was a while ago, but I've had Jeff on several times since then and on my summits as well. Always a very insightful guest in the mental game space. And yeah, he talked about an in-between point routine where you would slap your thigh and then feel your feet on the ground, play with your strings, and tell yourself a positive mantra. And what this serves to do is to refocus yourself so that you're not thinking about the past. Jorge Capistani talked about this as well. You don't want to be thinking about the past or the future when you're playing a tennis match. You want to think about, the present. So that's really important to, have these routines. Routines help so much in many regards, whether that's, before a match, during a match, after a match, just in everyday life. So definitely develop an in-between point routine to help you stay focused and refocus, during matches. And that's going to really help you because, as we all know, the mental game is vastly underrated and extremely important. And then tip number 11, because I do want to, again, give you a bonus tip. And also I did want to put a fitness tip in here as well, is to use a dynamic warm-up routine before your matches. So Dr. Mark Kovacs, episode 33, we talked about all things fitness, mainly strength and conditioning. But what he has said, and many other coaches have said, is that the dynamic warm-up routine is incredibly important. It only takes you, maybe 10, 15 minutes to do an effective one, but it's going to prime your muscles to perform well. Obviously, it's going to warm your body up, so reduce the chance of you getting injured, which is arguably the biggest bonus. But it's something that, a lot of players don't do, and I used to not do myself. And every once in a while, I catch myself as well not doing a full one. I pretty much always at least do one of a few minutes if I'm running really late or something like that. But I try not to do that. And so, simple things like a bit of jump rope, some footwork patterns, some lunges, some leg swings, things like that, arm circles and such, using the band. Those are all options. So, and I also have a dynamic warm-up routine on my YouTube channel as well. So tennisfiles.com/YouTube, and just search for, dynamic warm-up. But that is an extremely powerful one that has really made a big difference for me as well. So those are the 10 best tips from the podcast that help my tennis game and continue to help my tennis game that I was able to unearth from all these episodes. I definitely look through a ton of my notes and things so to formulate this list. But again, let me know what you think, what your favorite tip is here. I'll just run through them really quick. Number 1, cause chaos by using different doubles formations. Number 2, racket drop timing with the push of the legs. Number 3, for the serve. Number 3, pick big targets when being aggressive. Number 4, practice your serve and returns more. Number 5, focus on your footwork. Number 6, prioritize technique over winning in the short term. Number 7, record yourself playing on video. Number 8, focus on the contact point. Number 9, develop a game plan with visualization as well. Number 10, use an in-between point routine to reset after each point. And the bonus tip, number 11, is use a dynamic warm-up routine before you play, practice, or play matches. As I was looking over the list that I read, I would also just say, number 6, prioritizing technique. I mean, if you don't care about going to a higher level, say NTRP level, then, or even, there's up to a certain level, you don't have to change your technique. So maybe from a 3.5 to a 4.0, even a 4.0 to a 4.5 perhaps. If you don't want to invest the time, then you can focus on strategy, and that'll give you kind of more immediate success. But again, long-term, maximizing your tennis potential, you do want to keep that tip in mind to prioritize technique over winning in the short term. Fitting that we'd end with Coach Balateri's tip there. All right. Well, thanks so much for listening. I would appreciate it if you would leave a review for the show. And you can do that by going to tennisfiles.com/Apple Podcasts with an S at the end. And that would help the show the most if you leave it on that platform, just because it's the biggest driver of the show. But of course, any review on any platform is very much appreciated. Also want to leave you with a quote, as I do after the end of every show. And this one is by Dr. Seuss. And Dr. Seuss said, "You have brain in your head, or a brain in your head. You have feet in your shoes. You can steer yourself any direction you choose." Of course, it would be a rhyme with Dr. Seuss. But I like that one. And I like that you listened to the show today and want to improve your game. So with that, thanks so much for listening. And I'll see you on the next episode of the Tennis Files podcast. This is your host, mehrban signing out.